Hello everyone, this is Untold Force, and today I'm going to cover a question submitted by Kronk from Reddit to the VKB lab. And his question is, can I use my STECS, which is the modern throttle grip, as a source to give me differential braking to the T-Rudders? And the answer is yes, you can definitely do that. However, it is a pretty involved process. So I'm going to walk you through this process step by step. Now, there's two ways to cover differential braking. One is through the use of VKB Link. Now, again, we're talking about the rudders here. These are the T-Rudders. I have the VKB T-Rudder Mark V, but they should work with any of the VKB T-Rudders. VKB T-Rudders do not have built-in physical toe brakes. That's just from the how the rudders are designed. They're great for helicopter operations, but they don't have toe brakes like some other rudders do, especially ones that are used for airplanes. A really common question is, why do I need toe brakes? If you're flying older planes, like let's say, World War II planes, sometimes they don't have the ability to turn using like nose wheel steering, because many of them were tail draggers. Many of them didn't have a nose wheel. And even if you did have your rear wheel being able to steer, you would only really use that at low speeds. So if you're moving at any appreciable speed and you need to turn a little bit, you would just press down a little bit on the brake on one side or the other. And this applies to modern aircraft too. Tail draggers today still will use differential braking. So using a little bit of left brake will slowly turn the aircraft to the left and vice versa. So let's start at the beginning. Now, if you guys have done this before, if you've seen this channel before, you know that I cover things in a lot of detail and I move pretty slowly. So right now we can take a look and see that my STECS modern throttle is using an older firmware. This firmware 2.18.5 is from maybe about a year ago. So it's from 2024. Same for my rudders. So this is using a 2.18.5 firmware. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that everything's up to date. And we are using a modern version of VKB device config though. This is the newest version of VKB device config. This one just came out probably, I want to say maybe July or August of 2025. And you'll notice that there's a lot of differences between the newer VKB device configs compared to the old ones, namely in the Access tab. So first things first, we will go and flash our firmware. I'm just going to update the firmware on the T-Rudders because if you can do it on one, you can do it on all of them. So I'm going to turn off VKB Link, which we'll cover later. I'm going to close off all of these things, and I'm going to go back up to my VKB folder. And here, I know there's a lot of things here in the VKB folder, but I'm going to go to Z bootloader, which is the same thing that you can download from the VKB website. So let me bring that up real quick. And see if I have, where is that? There we go. Great. So if you don't have this software, or you need to download the newest firmware packages, anything else like that, we're going to go to vkbcontrollers.com. And then we will go to downloads right here. And you'll always want to make sure that you download the VKB firmware. So that's firmware for all VKB devices. That will be an archive, a zip archive. And in Windows, you can just right click it and extract. So you can just put that in a folder on your computer. You'll also want to make sure that you have VKB dev config, the device configurator. That is just an executable file. So that means that it doesn't actually have an installer. You can just download that, put it anywhere on your computer and run it. And to update firmware, we will need to use VKB Z bootloader. And that is what we'll be using right now. Again, that's just an executable you can download, put somewhere. And there's also T-Link listed here. I'll get into that a little bit later. So let's just first update the firmware. All right, so we're going to go to Z bootloader. And it's going to say no bootloader found, but some Enjoy32 controllers were detected. And in this case, I'm just going to show you how to update the T-Rudder one. So I'm going to use the VKB Sim T-Rudder. Again, this is on 2.18.5. I'm going to double click there. And then I'm going to choose the firmware package. Now, this is very important. If you have a T-Rudder, you have to look at the black box that it's attached to. So the T-Rudder Mark V works with and only with the black box 3. And older versions of the T-Rudder, so T-Rudder Mark IV, T-Rudder 3, T-Rudder 2, etc., can use different versions of the black box. So if you're curious, go to the VKB Discord, and there's a pinned post in there that shows you how to determine which version of the black box you have. In this case, since I know that I have a black box 3, I'm going to go to the latest firmware package from here, and it's 2.19.93, and it's a black box, so that is technically under the Gunfighter series in T-Rudders. And here we go, there's black box 3, or Mark 3, and fortunately, there's only one option here because Black Box Mark III uses a unified firmware, so you don't have to select your individual firmware package. So here I'm just going to use unified, open, and then I will click flash it. And I will wait. You can see the progress up top. I do recommend if you have any LED device software on your computer, namely things like Razer Synapse, Corsair iQ, Asus Armory Crate, anything like that, please exit out of that. And you can do that in your system tray by just closing out the app. Because a lot of those LED apps can cause firmware problems and cause other issues, even with just VKB device config. Razer Synapse is particularly egregious, so close them out. Save yourself the trouble. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Okay, so we have the firmware flashed. Now I'm going to go back to my dev config versions, and I've got a lot of them here. I apologize. I will open the latest one, and I'm just going to make sure everything looks good. There we go. VKB Sim T-Rudder version 2.19.9. That is fantastic. So that is the latest and greatest firmware as of today. That is publicly available. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go and default this to show you that we're starting fresh. And everybody should default, especially if you update from a really old firmware package. To default, you just click this tools. So as you just saw, I click the tools button right there, and then this big red button that says default. We click default, and this will reset all of your settings for your device. So keep that in mind. And here it's going to say need to configure controller. Do it now. I'm going to say yes. That'll auto configure it. And then the next thing it'll do is it'll say, you need to calibrate controller. Do you want to do it now? I'll say absolutely, yes. And so it brings up this new calibration window, which it never used to do before. Whenever it says set axes to 0 position, axes with center to the center. What this means is that there are some axes that are auto-centered. One of them being your T-Rudder. So your T-Rudder only has one axis. That is your rudder axis. So don't press down at all. Make sure it's nice and centered, and then click start. Now it says move the axes to the edges. Don't put in too much effort. So I'm going to push to the left, to the right, slowly. Again, to the left, to the right. And I like to do things 3 times. And then I'm going to let go and let it go back to center position, and I'll click end. Now my rudder should be calibrated. Let's take a look. Well, again, we go. So I went under test, then I went to axes, and now I see that axis X is the rudder axis, and I can move it a little bit to one side or the other, and we are good. So if I go all the way over, we're going all the way to the edges of the axis, and that's good. Now, axis Y and axis Z will be our differential brake axes, and we'll get those set up. However, I want to point out that there are a couple ways of doing this. One of them is that you can use T-Link. T-Link Mini allows you to use a single button press to configure and to use as the input for your differential brakes. Now, T-Link is different from VKB Link. T-Link uses a button press. VKB Link, which is available from this website, which I'll put a link in the description below, allows you to use an entire axis as the input for the button press. So let's pull up VKB Dev Config, and I'm going to show you the difference. If you go under buttons and POVs, and I'm going to go to the STECS throttle, so that way I can give you an idea. If you want to use something like, let's say, one of the buttons on your grip. In this case, I'm going to push the forward. So this is the forward left trigger. I could use that as a brake input. So that is button 22. But notice how that button is just an on or an off. Again, I'm going to do it again. On, off. It does not give you as much precision or control as having an entire axis. So I'm going to go under, again, this is the test, then axes. And I'm going to use the thumb wheel on my STECS. The thumb wheel is an entire axis. So that means that I can go all the way from 0 to 65,000 and have all of that precision available to me. So if I just want a little bit of brake pressure, I can just use a little bit of brake pressure, or I can use a lot of brake pressure. Either one should work. So this is where you have to decide. If you want this, if you want to have an axis as your input, which is what the gentleman requested I do a demo of, then this is the right video to watch. If you do not want or need an entire axis as an input, then it's much simpler. You can use T-Link Mini, and you can have that set up without going through all of the work that I'm doing. So there is a price to pay for having an entire axis. It is way more confusing. So keep that in mind, but that's what we're doing today. So if you want to download this, the next step you need to go to the Enjoy32 Help Center, which is it's the software that runs all of the VKB devices. And here, again, I'll put a link to the description in below for this website. Here you will find the firmware. These are experimental firmware releases, and this is also software. So in this case, you can go to either MS OneDrive or Mega Cloud, and what it will have is it will have all of the software packages that are more experimental in nature. So these are versions of VKB Dev Config that are not even publicly available yet. I'm not going to show them because, well, they're just a couple days old in some cases. But what you do want to download is this program right here, VKB Link, and we're going to be using version 0.7.5. VKB Link is an extremely powerful software package that allows you to send button presses, axes, different states of your device to other VKB controllers without an actual physical link. So you don't have to plug a wire from one controller into another controller to link them. VKB Link does it for you. And I will open it up right here to show you. So I already pre-configured this VKB Link, but I'm going to go and start it fresh. So that way we can see exactly how to set it up. So I'm going to close it off. I'm going to delete vkblink.ini. Notice how I've made backup versions of this so I know what I'm running, and if I want to go back to something that is working, I highly recommend just copy that little ini file, name it to something that you know, keep that backup there. Always helpful. But I deleted the VKB Link ini. That means that we're going to start fresh. So here we go. All right, I loaded it, and this is what you'll see the first time you load it. It says VKB Link version 0.7.5, and we have this link option here. Start is red. That means it's not working right now. And you have two main boxes. The first is the source, and the second is the target. In our case, I'm going to use the source. I'm going to click here, click the little drop down and select the STECS Modern Throttle Max Stem. And the target is going to be my VKB Sim T-Rudder. But we haven't configured these. Well, actually, I did kind of configure the STECS already. So I'm going to show you how I did that. But we're going to just ignore that I did this, and we're going to go to VKB Dev Config and show you how to configure your STECS. So if you've already defaulted your STECS, did everything the right way, you know, you've defaulted it, you've calibrated it, this is set up the way you want it, it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy to send the axis to VKB Link. In this case, we are going to be using this little thumb wheel right there, but you could really use any of the axes that are available. You just have to know which one it is. So to figure out what axis you're going to send, we're going to go to Test and Axes. In this case, I'm going to rotate the thumb wheel. And look at that. I know that that is axis Z. So that's the one that's rotating. Now, to send it to VKB Link, we're going to click Profile, and at the top go to Axes, because oftentimes this is open in a different panel, but you need to make sure that you click this Axis button or Axes button. And remember that what we sent there was axis Z. Okay? So here, axis Z, which appears on our logical axis, that's our third axis there, we're going to notice that that is axis ID 3. So logical axis is what we saw on the test page, and that's what's using Z. And we're going to go down here to physical axis. So if you have to make sure that you have physical axes selected here on the right, and under physical axes 3, you want to check this little EXT button, okay? EXT means that you are sending this axis and making it available to VKB Link. And just to be clear, it's also not a bad idea to make sure that you have virtual bus over USB enabled on your global external page. That is something that I use extensively for another video. So always make sure you have this checked. I love using that. So I'm going to go here, click set, because if you change anything on your global page, global external virtual bus over USB, you want to click set, and then you'll want to go to your profile, in this case axes, and then click the EXT button on the third physical axis, and set. And after we did that, we're pretty much done with the STECS. This is done. You don't have to worry about this again. What we do need to do is configure our T-Rudder. And this is where things get a little confusing, because first off, we're going to go and pull up VKB Link again. So VKB Link is here. I'm going to activate it. So there we go. It's active. It is sending data, because you can see that that's green. This is green. This is green. So it's sending data to the T-Rudder. It's grabbing that axis that we made visible on the STECS, and now we have to pull it in here. I'm going to go in VKB device config. I selected the T-Rudder at the top. I'm going to go to global, and I'm going to go to the external tab right here, and I'm going to select external devices on the left-hand side. This also may look different depending upon how long it is until you watch this video. If you're watching this video a year or two in the future, things look different. Well, that's great. I really don't anticipate, I don't know how this software is going to be changed in the future. So you may have to do some digging to find things like the external device page. But once you do, you can go and select the first available external device. So I'm going to select number 3 because it has nothing there for me. And under here, this is where we're going to, in essence, pull in our VKB link. So I'm going to select generic device. The second thing I'm going to do is select the port is virtual. The next thing I'm going to do is under the address H or address high, it is the first number of the two numbers that are in this order here. So in this case, it is 1. So I'm going to put 1 as the address high, and the address low is 46. So I'm going to put in 146. So there's 46 under ADRL. And now I have to tell it what it's going to import. And I'm going to import one axis. So AXN, you just need to select that to 1. So it's going to pull in one axis. We're not going to pull in anything else here. We can leave everything else as default. And under axis number, we're going to select virtual. And then the first number here will give you an option for which controller number you want to bind it to. I'm going to leave that controller 1. And for axis number, I'm going to select this to 4. So that is 4. Now I'm going to press set. Remember, anytime you change things on the global page, you want to press set. Now, sometimes your VKB Link may act up if you restart devices. So you might want to click stop, close this out, and open it up again if you've restarted your device a bunch of times. Because weird things can happen. Sometimes you'll have multiple devices listed, and save yourself the trouble. Just avoid those problems. And now what we're going to do is we are going to go to, again, our T-Rudder in VKB device config. I'm going to go under profile, and just to see what's going on, I'm going to go under logical axis, under the axis. So I'm here on the axis profile screen again. And I want to see what's happening with my logical axis 4, because that's the one that I'm importing via VKB Link. So I'm going to make that axis visible, and I'm going to click set. If you're still here at this point, I have to say thank you for watching, because I know this is really highly technical, but this is also very cool stuff. So what we are going to do is we are going to go to our fourth axis, the one that we're sending from VKB Link, click it, and we're going to check that there's two buttons here, ACL and ACN. We're going to make sure that these two buttons are checked, and we're also going to lower the MPL or multiplier down to 6. So click that a couple times until it goes down to 6, and then you're going to click set. Now, we are going to make sure that your thumb wheel is all the way maxed out, and then we're going to click Tools and Start Calibration. So make sure your thumb wheel on the STECS is in its maximum position, so all the way over. In my case, it's all the way clockwise. I'm going to click Start Calibration, and my axes are centered. So that means that I'm only concerned about the rudder axis. So I'm going to click Start. Now I'm going to move the rudder axes all the way left and right a couple times, and I'm also going to move the thumb wheel all the way from maximum to minimum a couple of times, and then I'm going to click End. And now let's take a look and see what our end result is. The end result is, if you click Test, then you go to Axes 1, we see that our rudder axis is centered. And let's look at our brake axis. So all of these should be the same at this point, because our rudder axis is centered. So let me increase the brake. Ooh, that looks perfect. I'm going to increase it all the way to 100%. Bam, there we go. Look at that. That is beautiful. So notice with 100% brake pressure, if we alter the rudder position, it will alter the individual brakes, axis Y and axis Z. So I'm going to increase that, and watch. If I go all the way to the left, that means that my right brake is at 0 and my left brake should be at 100%, which is exactly as it is. And by the way, you should bind this so that axis Y is your left brake axis and axis Z is your right brake axis. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to push my foot all the way over to the right, and my right brake axis is at 100%, because I want my aircraft to turn to the right. And likewise for the left, I'm going to just show you the differences. And if we want to decrease the brake pressure, we can see that it responds accordingly. So this is about, I don't know, about 60% brake pressure. You can see that it's behaving perfectly, just the way that I want it. If you decrease brake pressure even more and only have about a third brake pressure, look at that. That is perfect. So now this is all done. You can close off VKB dev config and not have to worry about it again. However, you will need to run VKB Link every time you go and want to use your STECS as the source for your differential brakes on your rudder pedals. So every time you load the sim, you're going to want to go and pull up VKB Link, and at this point it's already running. You can also click the Start Minimized button if you want it to start minimized, or you can just minimize it yourself, and it'll just run down there silently, well, hopefully silently, as you go and play your games. So you can use this in Flight Simulator, so MSFS. You can use this in DCS. You can use it in IL2. You can use it in any game. There is one other thing that I would probably recommend we do, just to clean up the work that we've done so far. I'm going to go back into VKB dev config, and I'm going to turn off the visibility for the overall brake axis. So remember how we bound axis 4 on our T-Rudder as the axis that we're importing in here? I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to go under Profile, and under Axes up here at the top, I'm going to uncheck the VS or visibility, so that way you can know it. You won't be able to bind it by accident in your games, because ultimately you only want to be able to bind your left brakes and your right brakes. That's how most games present those bindings. So left brake axis, right brake axis, and you want to bind those and not just bind the brake axis overall. So hopefully this was very helpful to you. If you thought it was, definitely like and subscribe. Also drop by the Discord. There's a lot of very smart, helpful people there, people who know way more than I do. And I have been using this stuff for years, and it feels like these guys have PhDs in this subject. So ask them questions. You'll learn so much from them, and you will have so much fun with VKB stuff. Really, the sky's the limit. This is this is some of the most user configurable software out there that I've ever seen. So have fun with it, toy with it, make it your own, customize it to your ability, and I hope that you have a great and awesome day. Thank you again. This is Untold Force.